Jan Kretschmann. I was Jan Knust. I was a boarder at Glennie for 4 years, from 1955, 56, 57 and 58, so that's 63 years ago. So that's a little while ago. And from your questions, I have written a little bit yesterday about my memories of Glennie, but from your questions, we might be able to talk about what it was like when I was here compared to what it was like now. Now, how many of you girls are day students? See, when I was here, there was a big division. And do you get to know the boarding girls?
Yeah, we all see.
Yes. Well, see, when I was here, there was a big division between the day girls and the boarders. We boarders thought we were just a little bit better. We lived here. And actually, it was only in later years when the classes were very small. My senior class, my whole senior class was 16. 16 of us did senior. And it was only then that we got to know the day girls, because before then we just didn't mix with them at all. Oh yes, there weren't many. There seemed to be quite a few day girls now. About half. Oh no, it was probably, it wouldn't have even been a quarter back then. Because in the 50s, the education of women wasn't, the education of the daughters wasn't high on the list of a lot of parents. I came from the country, and most of the boarders came from the west and the northern New South Wales and northern Queensland, and so most of us were boarders that came in from places where there wouldn't be education. And but as I said, the education of daughters wasn't as high. I mean, now it's equal education, isn't it? But back then, I think I was born and bred, went to a little country school at Rossvale with about 12, 14 people. So really, by today's standard, my parents were only an hour away, but there were no buses. And so a lot of the girls within that distance, and a lot of Pittsburgh girls, came into board because it was it wasn't easy as it is now to come in each day. But I think out of all the girls that I know in the area where I grew up, and all the girls I went to school with, I was the only one that went through further education, because my father was well educated. My mother wasn't. She had to leave school at 13, 14 and go home and help on the farm, which broke her heart. She just dearly wanted to do teaching, but daughters went home and helped on the properties, helped the mothers. And I think, as far as I know, I was the only one that went on to further education, because my parents didn't have a lot of money, but they thought if they gave my brother and me a good education, that's what they could do for us. I thought when I came here, I was 14, I was a year older than I should have been, but I had to ride a bike 6 miles a day to school. So I couldn't start school until my little legs were strong enough to ride this bike each day. So I was 14 when I came here. In those 14 years, I'd been away from my parents one night. And when they left me here that afternoon, you know, it's 63 years ago, but it's just like as if it was yesterday, I really thought, and this is not exaggerated, I thought I would die. Because suddenly there were all these people around me, there was noise, there was bells, and I was alone for the first time. I didn't have mum and dad and my big brother there to protect me, and I just really thought, I think my first letter home, I said to my mum and dad, if you don't come and get me, I am going to die. And then you feel sorry that you sent me here. So, and I always blamed my dad, because he was the educated one. But he would have come and got me, but my mum, who would have given anything for further education was the one who said, no, Walter, she stays there. She'll be okay. But this is what we've got to give her. We've got to give her education. Now the first year, we went to Sutton House. Now it was down. It's not there anymore, is it?
No, Sutton House is now the Assembly Hall. Remember, my class, we were talking about how it was a similar building to the gymnasium here, which actually served as a hospital.
But there were dormitories. When my mum and dad left me, I was standing in a dormitory, that's a big long room, of about 15 beds. And then there were little rooms that we had our clothes in and we dressed in. And then we slept in these long dormitories and went to our cubes to get dressed. And there were bills, and there were bills, and there were bills. And there was a bill for everything. And none of us knew what the bill was for. But we knew we were supposed to be somewhere at that time, but we didn't know what for. So that night there was a bill, and we all hopped into our beds, and no talking. We couldn't talk. Next morning at 6 o'clock the bell rang, so we got up, stripped our bed, pulled our bed back to air, went to the bathroom, which was once again a long line of basins, very much like your mum's basins, and behind that was a long line of showers, and corrugated iron separated the showers. And so we had to get up, we raced down there, put our slippers, we had to leave our shoes downstairs and wear slippers because otherwise it was too noisy. It was just board floors and the kindergarten was underneath. So we had left our shoes downstairs and put on our slippers. And so we put on our slippers, raced to the bathroom, cleaned our teeth, washed our face and hands, went to the toilet, no talking. Back to the door, back to the cube, got dressed, no talking. We couldn't talk until we got downstairs. I suppose we little country girls, I suppose in the beginning we just got a talking, but we just did as we were told.
You would have been trained not to talk.
Yes, yes. And then there were duck boards. Between Sutton House and Main, there were duck boards, and they're wooden boards just above the ground, about this wide, just enough for two of us to walk on. So we then had to walk, we could talk quietly, we had to walk on the duck boards up to Main House. We would do probably half an hour's prep, and then we had breakfast, and then we would go back to make our beds and get ready for school. We had about half an hour before school started, and we had a timetable, but in the beginning I'd know that I had to be at English, or I'd know that I had to be at history or whatever, but I didn't know where it was. I was just completely lost, and there were bells to separate period times, there were bells to tell you when to go into dinner, there were bells, the last thing you heard at night was a bell, the first thing you heard in the morning was a bell. Now through the day, the seniors rang the bells, but at night it would be house mistress or a mistress. And I think when we were in Sutton, when we were new, when we were youngsters, I think the bell rang at 9, the bell to go to bed rang at 9 and at 6 in the morning. And when we were more senior, the bell was 10 o'clock. So we had to be in bed from 9 till 6 or from 10 till 6, not talk. And you had to have a good reason if you got out of that bed.
Were you allowed to read?
Oh no. Oh. Lights out. Oh. When the bell went at 10 or 9 or 10, lights out. No reading. Oh, heavens no. I can remember swatting for exams. I would read with a torch. I'd be under the blankets with a torch, but the torch went out if I heard any footsteps coming, because I'd be in trouble if Yes.
Which was the Glennie room, girls.
The Glennie room, where we have Atchison, yes, where I come from. Things.
Yes.
That was yes. I know that there were only 16 of us that did senior, but I don't know the numbers of of the classes through then. I would say there'd probably be about 40. School started about 9:30. Most of the ones that I knew were around about 1940, 1941, so they were my age. The young ones, the little ones that you've got over here, were Glennie Prep over at the other side of town.
Was that at Smithfield?
Smithfield, yes.
Is that when Smithfield
Yes.
was used?
Glennie Prep, they were at Smithfield because we were allowed some Sundays to, and there was just cow paddocks between here and Smithfield, and some Sunday afternoons, especially if we had a little sister over there, but we were allowed to walk over there and visit the little ones. So the one, I would be one of the youngest ones. So 13 would probably, I was 14. I doubt whether anyone would be under 13. The dining room, we had two sittings. The sub-juniors and the sub-seniors went in together. And each table of sub-juniors had a sub-senior at the head of the table. And then, of course, there'd be girls over. That'd only be half a dozen tables. And the meal was brought to the head of the table, and the senior girl would take our plates and pass it around. Now, we weren't allowed to leave the table until everything on our plate was gone. And if we didn't eat something, we had to have a written excuse why we couldn't eat that, whatever. Now, I was left quite a lot because the spinach would not go down. It could go to here and come up, go to here and come up. And this happened until, at the end of the 4 years, I loved spinach because I was just forced to eat it. Yes, you couldn't leave the table until there was nothing on your plate, as I said, unless you had a written letter from sister or from a parent that there was some reason that you couldn't eat your meal. We were expected to converse as young ladies to each other very quietly. Before the meal arrived, we sat in silence, and then when we had our meal in front of us, we were supposed to converse. And you could not ask for anything. You had to look around, and if that little girl over there didn't have the salt, well, you said, you know, Julia, would you like the salt? If you knew that Sarah had sugar in her tea and the sugar was up here, you'd say, Sarah, would you like the sugar? But Sarah was not allowed to ask for the sugar. And so we quite often missed out on jam, you know, quite often we might have had a piece of bread without butter and jam because nobody at the table offered us, it was down the other end, and nobody, you'd look at the person down there. Like you, that'd be a reason that, you know, you had your bread without butter and you had your bread without jam.
It would teach you to be considerate, though, do you think, or do you think it backfired? Because wouldn't it make you a lot more considerate of
Well,
people?
that was one of the basic manners that we were taught. And as a hostess later on, in my adult life, if I had a dinner party, I was very aware to do that. And I was very aware that the hostess does not start first or finish last. A hostess watches her guests, and one might pick up a knife and fork, so you do. And then you slowly eat until you know that everybody has just about finished, except perhaps one, and then you put down your knife and fork so that nobody's embarrassed that they're eating too quickly or too slowly. Well, the meals at night they wouldn't be probably as good as your meals, but they'd be meat and veggie, and you know, meat and 3 veg and a sweet of some sort. Very basic. breakfasts were basic. They'd be toast and marmalade, toast and Vegemite, Weet-Bix, cornflakes. Sometimes perhaps an egg on toast, but once again, lunches were mainly bread and jam. On weekends, the kitchen was closed, so that the seniors, we lined up a kitchen window, and I was talking to a friend, because over 63 years I have forgotten so much, so I talked to a couple of friends who were here with me, and Desley said that she could remember that on Saturday nights we used to line up at the kitchen window and the seniors would be there to serve us, and we got, there was a warmed up Frankfurter or Savoy in a piece of bread. For Sunday breakfast, once again we lined up, we didn't go into the dining room. We had Weet-Bix, toast with jam and whatever we wanted on it, or not whatever we wanted, but, and a cup of coffee. And that was our only cup of coffee. So we looked forward to Sunday mornings. Through the week we ate 3 meals in the dining room. Weekends we didn't go into the dining room. The staff, I think the kitchen staff weren't there. And in my senior year, I used to like being on duty in the kitchen, because after everyone had eaten, we had all this, we could go to the fridges and all this lovely food that we found in the fridge. So we it's a wonder I didn't leave Glennie with a weight problem, because we used to, that night, you know, we'd be bulging we'd find ice cream and things like that, you know, plum puddings and things that were for the next week, but yes, we were allowed to have those. The day girls just ate wherever,
So they had to
under
bring
a
their own
tree, just wherever they were comfortable. I took an academic course. For junior I had English and French, Maths A, Maths B, History, Geography, that's 6. Chemistry, Physics, 8, yeah, cool. Chemistry, Physics. And then I won a scholarship. In those days, girls, very, very few girls went to university. Now, we Glennie girls, most of us could have gone to university and just about done anything. I could have done medicine, I could have done anything. But unfortunately, even though I did really well academically, I think it was pride. I was very lazy. And I won a teacher's scholarship after junior, and so I took it, thinking that, good, I don't really have to do a lot of hard study after this, because I've got the scholarship, and I'll just go to Kelvin Grove Teachers College for 1 year, which I did. I was the second last, I think, of the 1 year. Can you imagine going from Glennie, having 1 year training at Kelvin Grove, and then going into a classroom of children? We were, you know, we learned on the children. I was only a primary school teacher, so I knew I knew what to teach them. But as far as teaching skills, I think unless you were naturally a teacher, we had very little training. And then for senior, I was supposed to have at least 6 in the academic, 6 subjects. So I had English, Maths 1 and Maths 2, Geography, which I loved, it was my only A, and Physics. I dropped Chemistry, and then I took, we thought that, my parents thought for teaching, I took junior biology, because we thought that that might be a help with the teaching. So I had 5 senior subjects and then junior biology instead of a 6th senior subject. some of the seniors would stand up on the veranda and give out the mail. And they'd have the letters and they'd read the name on the letters, they'd call the name out, you'd put your hand up and they'd flick it to you. They'd flick the letters to you. Now when we came in, and this is even in senior, you had no contact with the outside world. You could not use the phone. The only reason that you could use the phone would be through the office. You had to go to the office to use the phone. We had letter writing every Sunday night in our classrooms. You had to write a letter home once a week. Now the letters that you wrote home were sealed. If you wrote to anyone else but your mum and dad, even a brother, you had to leave the letter unsealed. They say that the prefects used to open them. That was the rumour. But I know when we five were prefects, we would never open one of the letters. But you had to leave the letter unsealed. During school, we had the gym, which I think is just about the same place. And also, from memory, we had swimming and tennis lessons because gym and swimming and tennis were compulsory. They were the compulsory sports. We had to sign up for 5 periods of sport a week after school. Now, we tried to sign up, we tried to fit them into 2 afternoons at the most because unless you were back in the dorms straight away, there was no hot water. The hot water ran out with the first lot of girls having a shower. We had our uniforms, and then we had, from memory, 3 sets of civvies, which was a dress or a skirt and top, no pants, no jeans or anything. And I think 1, perhaps 2 pairs of shoes, and that's what we wore to the dining room at night. Now the swimming carnival, we had the little pool. There was a little pool near the tennis court. Is the tennis court still there?
Where our current volleyball courts are, on the side of the dining
There was a pool. Well, that of course wasn't big enough for a swimming carnival, so we went down to the Toowoomba baths, which were on the corner of Margaret and Hume. Now, do you know Toowoomba, near the park, near Queen's Park, on this side of Queen's Park. Now, the baths were serviced by a spring. The spring water came in, and it was icy cold. Even in summer it was cold, but in the winter it was icy cold. And so that a lot of people used to call it was known as Frog's Hollow because of the temperature. Yeah, I was in Hale. I was, and this is not boasting because today I would be nothing. But there were, as I said, 16 seniors, but I was house captain of Hale and one of the prefects. Now, you don't have prefects now, I believe. So there were always prefects in the senior class, and they were expected to be next to the teachers as far as if you could get good house marks or bad house marks. And if you got more than, say, 4 or 5 bad house marks in a week, you had to report to your house captain and tell your house captain why you've been naughty and why you didn't walk on the duckboards, why you didn't wear your hat when you went down the street, why your socks weren't pulled up. And then you could get good ones. And where we now, the assembly hall was above, was this height, down a bit further, I think.
Yeah, Maddie.
No. Oh, so Maddie, it may have been Maddie.
The assembly hall.
Yes, just next to the main house, just a little bit down from. Yes, that's Maddie.
And that's where every Wednesday morning we had assembly, where Miss Dowson came. She was the headmistress. She came and we had a hymn, and a prayer, and then she spoke to us about how the school was going. She read out the house marks. So if you were in Hale and you got 5 house, Hale might get 25 house marks that week, bad ones. And if you'd feel all guilty because you've got some of those house marks. Because there were more, nobody seemed to worry about good house marks, they always seemed to be bad house marks. And then she would, we would have a talk about general living and about we Glennie girls were ladies. And whenever we weren't actually in the school grounds, I wasn't Jan Knust. My girl friend Laurie Smith wasn't Laurie Smith, we were Glennie girls. And our behaviour was for Glennie. People wouldn't say, oh, I saw Jan Knust misbehaving on Sunday. They would say, I saw a Glennie girl. And then she would talk about things like swearing. Swearing belongs in the shearing sheds, girls. We don't swear, do we? No. She talked about you don't wash your dirty linen in public. You keep things within families, and you don't. And the main was, girls, never a borrower or lender be. It just causes trouble. Never borrow or lend. Never ever borrow or lend. So if we ever were caught borrowing or lending, we were in trouble. And I suppose it could cause trouble, but yeah, we had this half an hour talk about general living, which I took it all in. We had about 3 dances a year with grammar, or Slade, or in Warwick, or Gatton College. Now, if your name was on the list for the dance, you were very, very, very good, because a few house marks and a few misdemeanours, it was just, you were crossed off the list. So Miss Dowson would hang that over our heads a little bit. Before we went, mainly the grammar boys came here, and we had the dances in the gym, and the Slade boys came here. But we went down to Gatton College, and we loved Gatton College because they were men. They was older. Had to get to Gatton College, and but we went down there in buses to Gatton College. Now, before we went, Miss Dowson, we had to line up, and Miss Dowson would inspect us, and if she thought we were allowed a little bit of makeup, but if she thought the dress was, the dress would have to be down here, of course, and oh yes, oh no, you didn't show a knee, darling. Oh no way. And if you didn't pass, you were sent back to change. If you didn't have anything to change into, you just missed out. And I was here for the 50th anniversary of the school, the golden anniversary. That was in '58, and we had a special dance where you might have seen it on the movies or whatever, where you have a little booklet where the men come and sign. Can I have the such and such waltz? And so we had one of those dances, and we had those on a little thing on our wrist and waltzed around. And I can't remember, but this girlfriend of mine brought hers out, and I don't know what his name was, but it was Bill Smith, Bill Smith, Bill Smith, Bill Smith, Bill Smith. And then on the back it had, thank you for a lovely night, Bill Smith. And I said to Desley, oh, you hussy. You danced with the same boy all night. We danced about 3, but we weren't allowed out of the halls, of course, wherever we went for the dances. And then we were escorted from the hall, like at Gatton. If we went to Gatton, we were escorted by mistresses or prefects from the hall to the buses, so we couldn't get up to any mischief between the hall and the No. You see, it's so so different. That's 63, 60, 50, 8, 9, 60 years ago. Now, talking about that, next door here was a soft drink factory to the west of us, to the west of Glennie. The end of my sub-senior year, a group of girls one night snuck through the hedge over to the factory. They were expelled. Some of them were allowed, some of them didn't come back. Some of them, when I say they were expelled, if they had a good excuse and I suppose their parents came and saw Miss Dowson, some of them came back the next year. But see, they weren't allowed then to do their final exams. They had to go home. And so, and because of that, some of them didn't come back. So, see, we didn't, it was so different. It was just so different to what it is today. And I must admit that the next night after they were caught, a couple of friends and we were going through. So isn't that, you know, that would have changed my whole life. If I hadn't come back and done senior and done teaching, I wouldn't have met the man I married, I wouldn't have had the you know, my whole life would have been changed. So it was just good luck that they were caught the night before I was going, because everybody was doing it. And so it probably got back to Miss Dowson that, and they were caught this night. Well, the only performing arts was the inter-house plays. And we had those in the assembly hall. And there was a cup, I think, at the end of the year. There was a, yes, as far as that art, there was art. I did art, practical art in sub-senior as an extra subject. I should have done the full subject, but yes, art. Art theory and art practical was probably not like the arts are today. As I said, you had no contact. We had 4 outings a term, where either a Saturday or Sunday, where somebody could take you out. Now, if it wasn't your mum and dad, anyone else had to be on a list. And they couldn't even visit you. If somebody came to visit you, say after school on Thursday afternoon, and they weren't on the list, they weren't allowed, they wouldn't call you. Your parents had to submit a list of people who may want to pop in and see you. We had 4 outings a term. We had 3 terms a year, from when we came back, the beginning of the year, to May. We had a week holiday in May. May to August was the winter term, 2 weeks in August, and then from August till the end of the year. So in those 3 times, we could have 4 half days. Saturdays you could go out about 11:30. Sundays you had to go out after church. And my parents used to come in on a Sunday, so they always picked me up after church, which was probably near to 12 o'clock. We had to be back by 5. Wednesday night we had chapel, and that was evensong. Saturday morning we had chapel, and that was communion. And then Sunday morning we walked down to St James, and we walked in our houses. We could talk a little bit on the way down, but as soon as we could see the church, it was silence. And then when we walked away from the church, we had to be silent too. Met in the common rooms, and they're there just the other side of what was in the dining room, and you had to have some handwork to do. Now, Miss Dowson would read us a book for about an hour. All these different books. She would sit at the top of the room and she'd read to us, and we had to do handwork, fancy work, knitting, because for display at the end of the year we had to produce 5 pieces of handwork that we'd done through the year on a Sunday night. Get on the train and go to Spring Bluff every Founders Day and have a picnic, have a barbecue and a picnic, and we'd be in our civvy clothes And yes, that was a good day. And we were relaxed and sitting on stumps and wandering around and weren't worried about the bells and all that sort of thing. So yes, it was a good day. We had a Glennie fete, yes. And once again, the houses, I think the houses were expected to have a stall, and we'd get together and have meetings and different ones, like some of us might be doing art, so we'd do some art for it, and yeah. We had tuck shop on a Saturday afternoon. We got 2 shillings. We could buy all this rubbish for 2 shillings, but that had to be eaten that afternoon. You couldn't, and when we were out, we could not bring any food. So therefore, we'd come back from a day out, we'd be like this because we would have eaten a week's supply of food. We could either sit out here on the lawn or further on what was called the orchard, and but we had to sit 50 yards, which was about 45 metres, from the fence. And if a good-looking boy went past and you even happened to look, you better not be seen by a mistress or by a senior. Boys just didn't exist. Yes, a little bit of prep on the weekend. Saturday mornings, from what I can remember, we did a little, but very, very little. When exams were coming, when we sat out on the lawns, we used to do a little bit of prep. Now, what else would be interesting? Yes, but
What were your uniforms like?
now the uniforms were the same as you girls have on. Then we had church frocks. No, we had a suit which was a navy, a coat and a pleated skirt, and we had a felt hat for the winter term with the suit.
So
We had a little tunic that went through, and before sports day we had to kneel down so that the sports captain could measure from our knees up, and it had to be a certain length up from our knees, this little uniform. The languages that were offered were French and Latin. French and Latin, yeah. Friendships. You're like you're like a family away from home when you're a boarder. And I still, being close, my mum and dad, I used to be the one who took a lot of the girls home for Easter. Now Easter, the girls who lived in New Guinea lived in Mount Isa, northern New South Wales. They couldn't get home for Easter, so half a dozen of them come out to the farm, and so we made wonderful friendships. Morals. I left Glennie with an outlook on life, of a moral outlook on life and what I wanted from life, which if I'd just stayed home I wouldn't have. It really was responsible for me being who I am now. No, I think that I think girls of today know who they are a lot more than we did. And I think that Glennie will give them the basic, whatever they do from here, they'll have the basic knowledge, the basic morals, the basic friendships that they'll carry through their lives. I still, after 63 years, I can be anywhere in the world, and if the word Glennie Girls comes up, I stand tall, and I want to know where they are and who they are, and yes, I've never lost interest in Glennie Girls.